Hey, this is Black Powder Dust. Thank you for joining me. And hot off the end of my last playthrough, The Beach, I thought I'd take time out just to pause and to publish something that's been on my mind for a while, which is a more in-depth colony tutorial. Now, those of you who may be aware, I've done a 4-part Absolute Beginner's Guide a couple of years ago, and while most of it's still pretty accurate, there were maybe a couple of minor inaccuracies in there that was down to my inexperience, which I've now kind of got past, and there's a few ways of doing things a little bit more efficiently which I didn't really cover. So although this isn't an absolute beginner's guide, hopefully you'll find it useful even if you are a semi-experienced or experienced player to Rimworld, because the game is so deep, there's lots of facets to it, and some of it's quite nuanced, so I hope you find this of use. I'll carry it on until the colony is sort of established and I've covered the basics of most things, and then hopefully you can take it from there. So with any luck it will be of use. Any comments, etc., please do leave them. It's always welcome to get feedback and ways that I can improve my game. Now, the pace of the game is going to be slower because I'll be explaining pretty much everything to start off with anyway, but to compensate for that I'll be skipping out bits where nothing happens. I don't normally do that, that's not my style of playing, but I will do that in this instance because nobody wants to watch these guys sleeping particularly. Okay, let's get started. So this is the title screen. If you have the royalty DLC, this is what it will look like. If you don't, then your screen will look slightly different. I'd recommend getting the royalty DLC if you haven't. It's not that expensive and it does add quite a nice few aspects to the game. It may not be everyone's cup of tea, I appreciate, but it's certainly worth doing. Now, first thing to cover is really the options just very quickly, obviously the volumes and stuff. These are, I think, worth mentioning because it's kind of a matter of personal preference. I'd also mention the screen edge mouse scroll. Some people prefer that, some don't. I don't, so I turn it off. Keyboard config can be worth having a quick look at. Pause on any letter, this is defaulted, but I would recommend you have that because it will just kind of pause the action so you don't miss anything really important. Temperature mode, Celsius, Fahrenheit or Kelvin. Don't know who uses Kelvin, but for me, because I live in the UK, we use Celsius. There are mods available to change this so you can see both Celsius and Fahrenheit. I will cover mods towards the end and the mods that I think are particularly useful. Mods that will only change quality of life. I don't like mods which change the particular gameplay itself, just the quality of life. Again, everyone's different, so those are the ones I'll be covering. This is also important as well for a bit later on. Maximum number of colonies. Now I think this defaults to 1 or maybe 2. It means can you settle a second colony? There are reasons for doing this. You probably want to stay away from this just to start off with, but this is important to know if you try to settle a second colony and this is set to 1, because it means you won't be allowed to, and the error message may not be that specific, but hopefully it will. Alright, great. Let's get on then. So, new colony. Now, I would recommend, unless you've got a little bit of experience with Rimworld, start with the crash landed. This was the old traditional, this was at one point, I believe, the only way that you could play the game with the 3 crash landed survivors back in the old alpha days. This is probably the easiest, I would say, to start off with. Lost Tribe is a bit more difficult. You start with more people, but you have other challenges. Your technology is very low. You don't even have electricity. So your researching is going to be hampered. Everything costs twice as much to research. But again, on the flip side, you do start with 5 people rather than 3, and there are other benefits to having tribals that you don't get as normal 3 crash landed survivors with a kind of industrial tech level, such as tribespeople can get psycasts. They're like, think of them as magic spells which are introduced with a royalty DLC, and they can actually gain those without having to deal with the Empire if you don't want to. That's quite cool. Rich Explorer, you start with more stuff and a charge rifle, which is quite nice, and you get silver and gold and all the other bits and pieces. You start with gun turrets, which is rather useful. That saves a lot of time with research, but it's just one person. Until you get 2, 3, 4 people, this one person has to do everything. So your challenge is really around having a character who's quite well fleshed out and can do a bit of everything. So you don't want a specialist. You don't want somebody who can't do certain tasks, like incapable of firefighting. That's game ending. If your base gets set on fire for any reason, you just got to watch it burn. So I'd probably stay away from this to start off with. Naked Brutality, really, really difficult. It's like Rich Explorer, but you don't start with anything, including any clothes. So, yeah, I struggle with Naked Brutality, but you know what? If you want to go for it, crack on. Okay, now the other thing that you can do on this is you can actually do scenario editor as well. And this is actually quite nifty. So you can actually take what they've given you, crash landed, and then you can make changes to it. So you want to start with more medicine, go for it. You can start with 60 medicine. You want to start with more packaged survival meals, you can start with 100 packaged survival meals, or less, or more. And you can add different parts to it as well. So you can say, all right, I want to start with characters explode on death, and they'll just add it to the bottom. What's the radius of it? And is it bomb or is it incendiary? It's all good stuff. So you can literally go to town and have any kind of changes that you wish to make to this. And it's very, very powerful. So yeah, it's worth playing about with actually. You can create some really funny scenarios. And you can actually, which I think is really good, you get scenario editor and you just go randomize seed, click it a few times, and it will just give you some pre-made scenarios. So 3 from 10, you're on drop pods, you've got a planet killer coming in 453 days. It's easier to train animals. You can't ever have wanderers join. You can never build a cooler. You get permanent flash storm all the time, and you start with 13 random pets, and you've got all this stuff. And then you can just change this. So let's say I'll change it to tutorial. Any word you can think of, and it will just come up with some stuff for you. This is really cool. I love it. This is just good for a quick game if you want to play. These are generally not sustainable scenarios, but they're a lot of fun nonetheless. Anyway, have a play with that. It's good fun. Okay, crash landed. So let's crack on with this. So, storytellers. What's the difference between these 3 storytellers? Cassandra Classic is your traditional, this is one that a lot of people choose. Cassandra will treat you with respect to start off with. She will ramp up the difficulty with breaks between threats. She will try to get you very, very quickly to a minimum population of 4 if you start with the 3 people. The maximum that she will try to get you is 13. And I say try to get you as in there'll be events and quests and stuff which will aid people to join you. After that, you can obviously capture people and recruit them, but then you are on your own. Phoebe Chillax is a bit more relaxed. She'll give you, as it says, a lot of time between disasters, but just watch out with that because you'll be getting a lot of time between attacks happening. You might be lulled into a false sense of security. And it could the difference between when you got attacked once and then the next time, if your colony wealth has increased considerably, the next raid could be quite large and you may be unexpectedly unprepared for it. So that's worth bearing in mind. Randy Random, it says he'll generate random events, he just doesn't care. And he could send you 2 or 3 raids in a row with no time to recover between each one. They won't be unfairly sized against you, but the timing could cause you a problem. So I would say, look, just go with Cassandra Classic just to start off with. But by all means, experiment. If you just want a chilled time, put it on Phoebe Peaceful. There you go. And you'll be able to build your colony without much ado. We'll put it on Cassandra and we'll plot it on, I don't know, Adventure Story. That's kind of nice. And if you hover, pretty much hovering or clicking on information on anything in Rimworld will give you a really good idea of what it is that you can expect. It's always recommended. And then down here, reload anytime or commitment. Commitment is Iron Man. It's called Iron Man in other games. It means you can only save when you quit the game, so you can't save scum. But it's entirely up to you how you want to play. I'd recommend don't save scum, but have it in reload anytime. This is how I play. I don't like save scumming personally, because the thing with Rimworld, you're generating a story, so you've got to kind of live with the consequences of what you do. Anyway, as I said, it's entirely up to you. And it does say down here, you can change your playstyle at any time. So you're not locked into this, okay? All right, cool. So again, with a seed, now the purpose of a world seed is that you can share this with other people. So if you have a particularly good tile that you really like and want to share, there's a thriving community on Reddit, for instance, and obviously on Discord, you can share the seeds. So if I just put it, I'll call this tutorial. Oh, if I could spell, that'd be really useful. Tutorial. Oh, gosh, words are difficult. Or you can randomize the seeds, entirely up to you. Globe coverage, if your PC is not very powerful, leave it at 30, otherwise you can increase it to 50. Overall rainfall, this kind of speaks for itself. If you have it towards high, you'll have a lot of squares which are kind of swampy, marshy, and you'll have rainfall in the game quite a lot. So it's entirely up to you. Temperature, low temperature and high rainfall, you'll get a lot of bog, probably cold bog and things like that. Population, this is how many towns. This won't affect the amount of raids that you get, but it will affect how many towns and places are around you. So there's more bases of your enemy, there's more bases of factions to trade with as well. So I actually quite like having this kind of clicked up 1 or 2 levels. It depends. So again, play with this and see what you think. So we'll generate the world now. Now you'll see that 50% with a slightly enhanced population does create quite a few settlements, as we can see. Quite a nice world. There's not any islands, which can be potentially problematic because there's no ships right now. But it looks like we've got one main continent, which is pretty cool. But again, this really does depend on the power of your PC as to how long this will take to generate. So let's give you a quick overview of what we've got here. Now, first of all, the first thing to do is look at factions, and factions will be you've got mainly hostile factions. You've got the blue town, so those are the rough outlanders. They have a tech level equivalent to yourselves. Then you've got the fierce tribe. They are hostile, as you can see. A savage tribe are hostile, and then you've got pirates. So you've basically got two of your industrial tech level who are hostile to you, and then two tribes who are hostile to you. The yellows and the purples, you can trade with them, and I'd recommend that you do trade. Send caravans and do trading, because you can actually get a lot of really good stuff much earlier than you could if you just waited to research it all. And then you've got the Empire. So the Empire are the royals that we talked about in the Royalty DLC. If you don't have Royalty DLC, of course, this won't appear. Alright, so I would recommend, there's lots of different biomes that you can start on. Biomes are these things. So this is tropical rainforest, this is arid shrubland. You got see the different types. You got this is swamp and that's rainforest, for instance. And as you move around, you can see there's kind of different types. You've got boreal forest, temperate forest. Now, if your first playthrough, I'd probably recommend doing temperate forest simply because it's nice and balanced. You've got animals which are plentiful. You've got nice growing periods. You've got forageability, which is good for wild animals and also for yourselves. You can just forage and use those to cook meals with, for instance. So I'd probably go with a temperate forest tile. As you can see here, there's a lot of temperate forest on this map. Try and get something up near the equator, so your growing period is quite high. It's 40 out of 60 days. You really kind of want 60 out of 60. Oh, year round, perfect. There we go. Oh, this tropical rainforest, actually, that's not desirable. Not to start off with anyway. Let's have, how about up here? Year round. Okay, so what I'll do, I'll find a nice tile, and then I'll tell you why I think it's nice. Okay, so I found a hex here which I think is actually pretty good, and I'll explain why I feel it's a good spot. So it's temperate forest, as we just talked about. It's large hills. Now, large hills mean that you get quite a lot of kind of rock and stuff on the map, and within the rock contains resources, so steel, gold, jade, things like that basically. Now, if you start on a square like this, which is flat, there's less rock to mine, so you'll have less resources to play with. So I'd recommend going with the large hills, and also you can make a base in the hills if you want to. You've also got the option of starting with mountainous, which is like one of these squares over here. The only trouble with mountainous is that you're spending a lot of time mining, potentially, and mining does take a long time, especially in the early game, unless you've got a real mining expert. So I'd recommend you start large hills, which is quite good. Now, what else is good about this map, this hex? You've got granite and marble. Now, granite is the hardest stone type, so it's good to build your base out of it. And marble is very pretty, which means that if you make rooms out of marble, everyone gets a nice buff from the beauty of marble, and they will have a very, very happy time of it. And Rimworld 101 is keep your colonists happy. That really is the be all and the end all of the game. So marble is highly recommended. Marble is not very tough. Slate is not very tough, so you could use granite for your base, marble for your rooms, and slate for other stuff, which doesn't really it doesn't really matter, internal walls or whatever. Growing period year round, rainfall is fine, forageability 100%, which is great. Animals can graze now, brilliant. Now the year, it falls into 4 quadrums, and I'll show that on the screen now. So each year is broken up into 4 quadrums, as I mentioned, and each quadrum has 15 days. So year is effectively 60 days, which is what this growing period means, basically. You'll see in some places it says 20 out of 60. So it's 60 days, basically. That can be a bit hard to get your head round. So, yes, something to be aware of. It's not super important, but sometimes you need to know how long is it going to take approximately from one time to the next. So we shall see. Okay, so we are going to select the site. I think it looks quite good. And if any time you want to share your seed with somebody else, you can just click on planet. The seed is what you use there. It tells you what your coverage is. And then you can get your coordinates from... Where is it? Where's the coordinate? Sorry, here, yeah. 2163 north, 3.70 west. And so you can actually share that with somebody else, should you wish. I actually clicked away from it, didn't I? So yeah, 2392 and 1.56. Okay, cool. Good stuff. So let's click on next. All right. So what we do here is this is your character collection screen, and selection screen, not collection screen, although there is a collection of people. And what I like to do when I play myself, not on YouTube, is to just I'll pick from one of these 8. It's kind of in the spirit of the game to pick from one of these guys. You can click on randomize and you just get random people. So if you don't like what you've got, by all means click on randomize. You can click through on each one and then choose accordingly. But as I said, for me personally, I'll just go with one of these, which is what we'll do now. So what we've got here, we've got Lottie, who's an illuminator. Again, hover, and it tells you a little bit about themselves, what they're incapable of, and what their traits are. Some traits are a lot better than others. So you've got positive traits, negative traits, and traits which are kind of neither here nor there, and traits that you can kind of work around. So Undergrounder, she has no need to switch the outdoors or light, is actually quite useful. Slow learner is not particularly great, as it says global learning factor. So these skills are going to be very slow to go up. But she's pretty good at medical, reasonable at social, can't firefight. Okay, we'll come back to that one. So what I'll do is I will go through this now, and I will tell you why I've picked the 3 that I've picked and why I haven't picked the others. Okay, so we've made our selection and we have Fleming, Eugene and Jonathan. So Fleming I've picked because although chemical interest is a negative, it can be managed. It will, as long as you give her some minor drugs, he will be happy, which is great. Quick sleeper, really good. Spending less time sleeping, that's nothing bad. Night owl, up at night, doing stuff at night, brilliant. Because it means that you're still productive even when it's nighttime, so that's absolutely brilliant. Good at arts, so we can make some good arts. Good at medical, good at social. Very important skills. Social, not so much sort of early game, but certainly recruiting prisoners and trading will be very useful. Brilliant. Eugene, Glitterworld, empath. Can't do violent, which is a bit of a drag. Early game, again, not such important, but they have 3 burning passions, which means they'll learn at 150%. So you get them on construction, they get them on plants. Social, they'll do themselves anyway, and this is really good. Beautiful, which means they are going to be very, very attractive, and I can't remember exactly what beautiful does in terms of they're less likely to get into social fights, perhaps. Can't remember. I'll have to look it up. Which reminds me, actually, this is a good time to plug the Rimworld Wikipedia. The wiki is really good. It's the best Wikipedia I've ever seen. If you have any questions, look in the Wikipedia. In fact, I'm going to do that right now and tell you exactly what beautiful is. So if you've got a question, the Wikipedia will have the answer. So each point of beauty corresponds to plus 20 opinion from other colonists. So because they have beauty, what have they got? They got plus 2. They have plus 40 opinion from other colonists, which means pretty much everyone's going to like them all the time. That's a good thing. They're going to less likely to get into social fights, pretty much. Social fights are a real drag. It normally ends up with 2 of your colonists going to the hospital to get patched up from bruises and God knows what else. So, handy. Neurotic is not so great. It means that, well, they'll work faster by a 5th, but the mental break threshold is slightly higher. They're more likely to break. And Optimist means they're permanently at plus 6, which is great. That offsets neurotic negative, and the fact they work faster is great. So if you get a neurotic plus 20 work speed plus construction, they learn quicker. This is going to be fantastic. He is going to be a really good pawn really quite quickly. The only incapable of violence is a bit of a drag, but we can get around that. Jonathan, Deep Space Miner. So we have here, he can't do caring or social. Okay, fine. He's a gourmand, which means he's really good at cooking, but he is more hungry than other people. That's not such a big deal. Teetotaler, again, that's fine. No alcohol, no recreational drugs. All this means is that you can't artificially cheer him up. He's got to get his happiness from other means, so not drink beer or smoke a spliff or anything like that. A volatile means is a bit higher to break, but again, you can keep them. You can offset that by keeping him happy. He is good in areas the others aren't, and so you can see an area of the average of your team skills down here. So honestly, we're a bit low in intellectual and we're a bit low in shooting, but everything else we're actually pretty good in. So I think we actually got a decent team here. Yeah, I'm happy with that. So what you do is if you're happy with that yourself, then you can click on start. And what happens now is the game will put them on the hex you just chose. Okay, so here we are on the map. The 3 of you awake in your crypto-sleep sarcophagi to the sound of sirens and ripping metal. Let's see what we've got. Alright, so first thing to do, stop the game and zoom out and take a look around. So what have we got then? So we got some nice bolt holes, we got a decent amount of, we've got animals, we've got stuff on the map. got some silver, we've got some compact machinery which turns into components, we've got steel, we've got old bits and pieces we can take down, beautiful, very nice. Yep, we've got a kind of an area here which we could actually use ourselves. Okay, I like it, this is looking good. I think it'd be quite I'll say again, easily defensible. So I'm actually feeling quite confident about it. So what's the first thing you do when you land? First thing you do when you land, other than zooming out, is you go to Architect, Orders, you right click on Allow, and you say Unforbid all items. If you don't do that, you'll have to double click on these and, you know, allow them all separately. It's all a bit of a drag, and you're bound to miss something as well. Next thing you do is you go to Work, and you click on Manual Priorities. Don't ever stick with this. This is too... the granularity of the control just isn't there with that. Always go to Manual Priorities. You hold down the Shift key, you click on Firefight. If you want for it to go down, you click on, you shift and right click. That's it. Okay. Now I always set these to 1 for everybody. Doctor, who have you got? 8, and we've got 10. So by all means, you can all go at 2. Bed rest, basic. This is like flicking switches. Bed rest is going to bed if they recuperate. If they've taken any injury. As far as I'm concerned, that's quite important. Otherwise, they're wandering around with minor bleeds and stuff, and it could lead to infections, and it's actually quite irritating. Right. After that, what you do is you take a look at each pawn, and we decide what it is that they're going to do. So, wardening. Wardening is dealing with prisoners and delivering food. At the moment, this is not very important. We'll leave that as a 3. So, handling. This is dealing with and training animals. We got 3. We got 1. We got 2. Okay. Yeah, that's fine. We'll come to the dogs in a minute. Cooking. So we'll see here that Jonathan's going to be our cook, and Fleming can be the backup. He's so bad at cooking, we'll never let Eugene. Have we got all men? Is that what we got here? Is this a boys' club? Let's have a quick look. Male. Oh, it's men. Okay. That's not necessarily that good thing, because they can get bonus from loving. And none of them have the gay trait, so we're not going to get easy fixes from them pairing up, at least to start off with anyway. Okay, handling, cooking, hunting. Right, now hunting is always done with a long range weapon which doesn't fire very often. So basically the bolt action rifle is perfect. The nearer you are to the animal and the more shots you fire, it stands a chance of making them turn manhunter and seeking revenge. Now on this map it's not very likely to happen. So we click on wildlife and we can see here we've got lots of muffalo, which is great. We've got lots of bucks, doe, ibex, fantastic. This percentage number means the chance that they will seek revenge upon being harmed. Again, just hover over it and it'll tell you. And it's basically telling you that every time a shot is fired, this is calculated. So you basically, the rule of thumb is don't go hunting with a low range machine gun because you are going to trigger them, and you don't want early game a herd of muffalo coming at you. Say you're hunting this muffalo, you stand a chance of not only triggering this muffalo but the whole herd at the same time. This is colony ending, trust me. You simply do not have the people or the weapons or the armour to take down all of these muffalo before they finally smash you to the ground. They won't kill you, but if you're down on the ground, the game is... you may not get up again. So, anyway, there we go. Alright, so that's hunting. So let's sort that out. We'll put that on hunting too because it's quite important. So we'll make sure that Jonathan picks up the bolt rifle. Alright. Next thing to do is work out who's any good at melee. Now, as far as I'm concerned, I don't think anybody's good at melee. In fact, Eugene isn't. So Fleming is going to pick up the pistol. And the knife we'll just have to put into storage. So that's absolutely fine. Right. Next thing we do is look at constructing. So we've got some pretty good constructing skills. We're going to, well, they're average constructing skills. So we'll actually put him on 3 because he's not very good at it. But he is very good at well, he's better at growing. So he's going to focus on growing. These guys can focus on growing if they've got nothing better to do. Mining, sure, Jonathan's very good at mining, and I guess that he is to a lesser degree. Plant cutting, again, it's these skills here. We will actually put him on construction too because he's got a burning passion in it, so we can see these little 2 flame symbols. So he will learn this quite quickly. Plant cutting and growing. Now there is a subtle difference between these two. Again, you can hover. Growing means you'll be planting stuff, and this means that they will prioritise not only planting the seeds but also harvesting them as well, and also foraging. Now, plant cut is when you're cutting or harvesting plants as designated. Now, what that means is if I go to this and say chop wood, that comes under plant cut. It's not growing or harvesting skill. Okay, so if you want them to go out and cut loads of trees down as a priority, you'd set this higher. Okay, smithing, tailoring does not come into this as of yet. I'm going to turn those off for now, just to start off with. And hauling and cleaning again is not a priority. There's no researching to be done as of this time. Okay, now very quickly we'll cover the schedule, and I think one of these was a night owl, right? Yeah, night owl. So Fleming was a night owl. So I have to make sure that Fleming is asleep between 11 and 6 p.m. So I'll get a schedule and I'll set to sleep. So 11 and 6 p.m. and I'll make sure that he can do anything. It was Fleming's. Attention to detail. Okay, so let me just do that. So Fleming is sleeping at those times. And I'll make sure that Eugene, who this is not about, Fleming is the night owl, isn't he? Yeah. So Fleming is going to be asleep between those times, and it's always good to tack on a couple of hours of recreation before they go to sleep and after they wake up. And also it's quite nice if they can have recreation at the same time, which doesn't always work in terms of the night owl, but if they can overlap here, that's very nice as well. Okay, so that is the schedule dealt with. Assignations. Now in here you can basically choose how they deal with a nearby enemy if they're not drafted. By drafted I mean if you click on the draft button here, obviously. So currently set to flee, which at this early stage is probably the right thing to do. Food restrictions, outfits, drug policies, we'll come to that momentarily, but the only thing I would say with outfits, they're all set to anything. Make sure you set anything to 51%. So if the quality of their clothes drops to below 51, i.e. 50, they will remove those clothes and they won't get a debuff. And you can see that these are all set to 100%, because if it doesn't say a percentage, it's 100%. Okay. That is that. Animals, so we can get the animal trained. You can rename the animal from this square from this button if you want to. Definitely, I would say get the animal training on hauling. I don't tend to bother with attacking rescuing. I don't want my animals to attack because they're going to get caught, and because they will obviously all melee. Animals can't fire guns, so while they're meleeing, your guys could be shooting them by mistake. So I tend not to bother with these two. I tend to get them to haul. Dogs are especially good at hauling. Because they have a filth rate of 0, which means they do not track, well, they might track dirt in, but they don't generate dirt themselves. Okay, so that is actually really useful. Dogs hauling for you tends to be quite a thing. It's really a time saver for your own colonists. All right, so that has been done. So let's work out what we're going to do. We are going to take over this base here. What I'm going to do, I'm going to quickly chop down some wood. Let's chop down some wood here, seeing as they're all in this area, just a little bit to start off with. And the other thing we're going to do is create a stockpile zone, which we're just going to stick here, which means that if they're not chopping wood, they'll be hauling stuff into this zone. And by that I mean these prepackaged survival meals, some wood, any stuff that they're not wearing. What I'm going to do, I'm going to let them pick whatever armor up they want. Ideally you want your melee person to have the best armor, because they're going to be the ones taking most of the damage, but in this case we don't have anybody to melee. Really, so yeah, it's let them pick whatever armor they want. We'll soon get more armor as time goes on. Alright, so they're doing that. Immediately starting to chop the trees down, and it's warning us we need colonist beds. We absolutely do. Not necessarily a priority to start off with, but what I would do is stick down some sleeping spots just straight away. It doesn't really matter where. And what we will do very quickly is to bang up some quick walls. Now you have a choice here. You can just put up a quick kind of walls using wood. Now wooden walls, the problem with wooden walls is that they're not very strong, and they do catch fire. So what I would be inclined to do is take apart any bits of scenery that you can. I wouldn't probably build steel walls, but I would see what else you can do. So this is all steel, right? This all steel. Wouldn't take that apart, but you can start taking this down. This is granite. Again, that's steel. It's granite. So you can take this down, start building walls with that. It's still steel anyway, isn't it? Yeah, this can be replaced later. What I would do is just deconstruct that. And we got some of this to start off with. So I'm not going to cut down too much wood. I'm going to cancel a few of these. We'll get some. We're also going to create a dumping stockpile zone to stick all of the bits of chunk and all the other things. So if you create a dumping stockpile, it automatically only allows corpses and stone chunks and steel slag chunks. So these are stone chunks. Steel slag chunks are these things. Those can be turned into steel at a later date. All right. So just by creating this doesn't mean to say that these will get hauled. So what you need to designate them to be hauled. Unless, I believe, is it if they're in a home zone? I can't remember the mechanics. Yeah, if they're in a home zone, I think they get hauled automatically, but I could be wrong. So what you could do, just to make sure they get hauled, is just to mark things to be hauled, and they'll get shifted over with a lot more focus, basically. So what we can do is we can basically take down some of these granite walls which are in the wrong place. Let's do that. And we can just build a small little area for us just to get started. And honestly, these things that are kind of in the wrong place, we can take these down as well. Okay, so now we've got a little bit of stone we can see up here. If you don't like the way that this is nested, you can actually change that from down here, bottom right hand corner, so you can get a flat list instead, which I think could be quite useful for you. And then we can start on with our structure. So we have 187 granite blocks, that's perfect. Again, try and avoid making your base out of wood, even from the start if you can avoid it. So I'm just going to make a very small sleeping area just to get these guys off the ground. Something like that. We'll do a wooden door because wooden doors open very quickly. We can go into why wooden doors are good at a very later date, or slightly later date, shall I say. So we're going to get that built start off, which is cool. We're kind of okay for food for now. We want to get the medicine hauled inside because it is deteriorating because it's unroofed and outdoors. So that's something worth bearing in mind. What we need to do is create a zone like this inside, and we can haul the medicine in. But in the meantime, they are getting this done and put together like this. Now you may be wondering what this is. This is a ship chunk. You can simply click on deconstruct, and this will turn into components. Components are very important for making electrical things. We have some components, as we can see. We start with 30, and again, these deteriorate. So it's worth clicking on things and seeing what's deteriorating because it's unroofed and outdoors, and make sure we get them inside as soon as possible. If you can't get them inside for a little while, you can slow the deterioration by putting up a roof. You build roof area, and as long as you are next to a wall or a pillar, you can see, if I just do that, this may already be on the roof already, bottom left hand corner, we can see actually it's not. If it was on a roof, it would say there'll be a roof area. You can actually see what's roofed already by clicking on the button over here, toggle visibility of roofs, and we can see that there's no real roofs around here, as you'd expect. So we'll actually put those up. So somebody, if I just speed this up, if I just come over here and right click, is he not on constructing? Maybe Fleming's not. No, he is. Okay, it's interesting. Is Eugene on it? Yes, Eugene's building roof. See? So now it's deteriorating because of outdoors, not because it's unroofed. You see the difference? Unroofed outdoors, outdoors. So the deterioration is slowed just because there's a simple roof on it. It's worth bearing in mind. All right. This is also. This is not roofed. The reason you can see that is because on the right hand side it says outdoors, as we can see. If it was indoors, it would say indoors because there's a roof on it, so we can toggle that. We can see that's not roofed. As soon as Eugene finishes this will automatically be roofed, as we can see. There we go. And now bottom right hand corner it says indoors. Perfect. Okay, so we have our first room, and we can now start to maybe build beds or just basically move the stuff inside that we need to. But the point is we have our people some shelter, so they won't get debuffs for sleeping outside. We'll notice here, slept outside, slept on the ground. Remember, this is all about keeping your colonists happy. So that's -8 right there. We don't want that. We've got plenty of wood. We need to start building beds and light and make sure that our colonists are happy. And I think we're going to leave it there. That was a fairly packed first episode. I hope that was useful. If you have any questions, anything that I maybe didn't cover enough detail, or any feedback, again, it's always I'm always happy to take that on board. I'm not pre-recording these, I'll be doing one at a time, so I will be able to take your comments into account if you do leave anything for me. So thank you for your time, I hope that was of use, and I will see you on episode 2 of this Rimworld Vanilla Colony tutorial. Take care, this is Bug, pulling the plug.